For 40 years, Frank Dooley delivered every letter on his route except one. He'd walked the same 5-mile loop through Willowbrook, Vermont, since he was 28 years old, past the Congregational Church, around the Memorial Green, up Maple Street, and down Cherry, with the leather satchel his father had handed him the day he signed his union papers. He knew which porches had arthritic steps. He knew which dogs barked and which ones wanted their ears scratched. He knew which widows waited at the window at 11:15. Not because they were expecting anything, but because Frank himself had become a kind of weather they were used to. On his final Tuesday, the first true autumn morning of the year, he walked out of the post office carrying one thing that wasn't in his satchel: a thin, yellowed envelope he had been carrying in his jacket pocket for 32 years, addressed in a younger hand, his own. He did the easy houses first, the Kowalski's pension check, a birthday card for the Petersons' grandson, a catalogue for Mrs. Abernathy that she would paper her kitchen walls with, because Mrs. Abernathy liked looking at kitchens she didn't have. Frank tipped his cap at Ray the mechanic, nodded at Sheila from the bakery, who crossed the street to hug him, and whispered that the whole town was coming to his retirement supper that evening. He thanked her. He walked on. With every porch he closed behind him, the envelope in his jacket pocket grew a little heavier, the way things do when you've been pretending they don't exist. At the corner of Elm and Washington, he stopped to rest against the wrought iron fence of the old Presbyterian cemetery, and for the first time in 40 years of route walking, he sat down on a stranger's stone wall and put his head in his hands. The letter had been written in 1992 by a 28-year-old Frank who had been in love with his best friend's wife and had done the wrong thing about it, which was to write her, on cheap post office stationery, a letter explaining everything he could not explain in person. He had addressed it. He had even stamped it. And on the morning he was going to deliver it, he had passed her husband on the sidewalk, Jim Marston, who had clapped him on the shoulder and asked him to be godfather to their unborn child. And Frank had walked the rest of the route with the letter in his jacket pocket and told himself that some words are kinder when they are kept. Jim Marston had died in 2004. Helen Marston, the woman he had loved, lived alone now in the Victorian at the end of Maple Street. She was 90 years old. The letter had aged 32 years in the same pocket. Today, it was going to get delivered. Helen Marston's porch was painted robin's egg blue and had 3 steps Frank had helped repair in 2011. He climbed them slowly, as if each one cost something, and knocked the way he had knocked on this door 10,000 times. Soft, twice, pause, once. Helen opened the door, leaning on her cherrywood cane, wearing a lavender cardigan, her white hair pinned back in the same loose way it had been pinned back for 40 years. "Frank," she said, and her face warmed, and then cooled because she saw his expression. "Is everything all right?" He took the envelope from his jacket. The paper had yellowed. The stamp, a 29-cent love stamp from 1992, had begun to peel. "Helen," he said, and his voice did not hold, "I have a letter for you. It was written a long time ago. It took me a long time to work up the nerve." He held it out. She looked at the stamp. She understood what it was, immediately, the way old people sometimes know things before they know them. Helen read the letter, sitting on her porch swing in the afternoon sun, with Frank waiting on the step below because he did not want to watch her read it and did not want to leave either. She read it twice. She did not cry. When she was finished, she folded the letter along its original creases, put it back into its envelope, and held it flat against her heart with both hands. "Frank," she said, If you had given me this in 1992, I would have left him. Frank nodded, because he had known. And Jim was my best friend, he said. I know he was, said Helen. That's why you kept it. They sat together for a long time without speaking. Maples shook down their leaves. A crow called from the cemetery 2 blocks over. Finally, Helen patted the wooden slat beside her. Frank climbed the last step and sat. She took his old hand in her older one, and they listened to the quiet street together. Frank finished his last delivery an hour before sundown and walked back to the post office with a satchel that for the first time in 40 years held nothing at all. He turned in his keys. He signed his last time card. The town gathered in the church basement for his retirement supper and served pot roast and read speeches, and Frank listened to stories about himself he had forgotten and laughed at the ones about the dog bites, and cried once, very briefly, about a letter he had delivered to Evelyn Carver the day her son came home from the war. Helen Marston did not come to the supper. She sent a card. It was tucked into Frank's jacket pocket by the end of the evening, and he read it at the kitchen table that night after his wife had gone to bed. It said, in her thin, steady handwriting, "Some letters find their way home the long way. Thank you for finally bringing mine." Frank sat in his kitchen, under the soft hum of an old overhead light, and felt 32 years of weight slide off his shoulders and onto the floor, where, for the first time in his life, he did not feel the need to pick it back up.